Members of Synod, this is now, as I said last night, the fourth year where I've tried to provide some accountability for the way we have addressed in the previous year some of the challenges that we identified. Really, we started to identify them at the beginning of 2013, and we gained a real sense of the financial position of the diocese after Trust Management Limited had the contract for about 12 months. And many of you will remember, those of you who have been in the house for a while, but those of you who knew won't remember that at that point, Trust Management actually had to invest significantly more time than we were able to pay for. Trust Management is entirely owned by the Diocese of Christchurch, and it's a company. What did I say?
Christchurch.
They'd like. Diocese of Auckland, and they look after the investment management and the property management for some of our biggest church trusts, the St John's College Trust Board, the Melanesian Mission Trust, the General Church Trust Board, as well as all of the trusts for the Diocese of Auckland, the management of the financial services of the diocese, and now us as well. So effectively what happened was that the Diocese of Auckland, out of the profits generated for that company, paid for those additional hours for about 2.5 years. So when we receive greetings from bishops in other parts of the church, sometimes that love and care and support is very tangible, as it was in the case of the generosity of the Bishop of Auckland and the Diocese of Auckland. It was effectively $150,000 that they could have been spending on ministry in their diocese, but instead of that, they took a reduction in the profit from that company and supported us. So we may at times have felt as though we've been a bit alone in some of this, but we have not been alone. This is somewhat different, and rightly so, because 3 years on, fourth report, we are in a very different position. I want to reiterate my appreciation to some key people. I want to acknowledge Elizabeth Bang as chair of the Waikato Diocesan Trust Board, John Eagles, the chair of the Taranaki Anglican Trust Board, and particularly to acknowledge, as I'll point to in a moment, the fact that they're functioning together as a single board for the diocese, same membership, functioning for those two trust boards. Robin Brocky, who has put hour after hour into working with trust management over the last few years, bringing his expertise as an accountant and particular expertise as a forensic accountant has been quite useful in helping to settle on, at times, some quite difficult decisions about where things get allocated. To Simon and Simon's team, particularly to Jill for the work that you have done, to all of the members of the Trust Board particularly. There have been many people who have given selflessly to get us to the position that we're in, and there's some good news contained in this presentation. So I want to structure it a little differently. The beginning will be to offer an overall vision of where we are moving in terms of mission and ministry in the diocese. Then to take maybe 5 to 10 minutes to reflect on some of the specifics of the achievements that we've gained in the last 12 months in relation to those challenging matters, and then to dig into some detail about how we might move forward with a structure for mission where we can resource and enhance what we're currently doing, while also targeting some particular challenges that we face as a church. Family of God, followers of Christ, people who are, as I said last night, marked by gratitude, growing disciples. We are growing as disciples, and we are seeking to grow disciples. Transforming communities that are transforming by their example, by their life, for those who participate in them, transforming communities that transform the communities in which they're set. Across the whole Anglican Communion, we are committed to these 5 marks of mission, to proclaim the good news of the kingdom, to teach, to baptize and nurture new believers, to respond to human need by loving service, to transform unjust structures of society and to challenge violence of every kind, pursuing peace and reconciliation, to strive to safeguard the integrity of creation and sustain and renew the life of the earth. To be a people marked by gratitude is to be a people who bring that sense of the love of God and the giftedness of this life and the call that is placed on each of our lives into everything that we do, into our prayer and our worship, into our service of others, into our stewardship of creation and giving, and the care of our created world. Growing disciples is manifest in our baptizing and our nurturing, in our formation and our education, in our personal, corporate and numerical growth, in our proclamation of the gospel and in our evangelism. And transforming communities is through our loving service, our willingness to challenge unjust structures, and in our advocacy for peace and reconciliation. That image is of the Peace and Reconciliation Centre, Te Whare Honona, which is to be built at St Mary's Cathedral in Taranaki, a space that will be reflective of Te Ao Māori, a space that reflects the story of Ngāti Te Witi, the local hapu, a hapu without whose generosity those first settlers would not have survived the first winter, but who found that within 10 years they had not any of their ancestral land or their sacred sites still left to them. It's a parallelogram, and each of those corners points to a place of significance, to Paritutu, the point that is facing you. Te Mauna Taranaki, Te Mauna Tapu, the Moana, the sea from which so much resource comes and which holds the very life of the planet in its lungs. And then the hill that sits behind the cathedral church, most significant site of Ngāti Te Whiti, but topped and the garrison barracks put there, and St Mary's became the garrison church, a church that housed the gunpowder that through the 60s and 70s was so devastating to Māori in Taranaki. A place of peace and reconciliation, a place where those kinds of hard conversations will be had, with the support of Te Kotaitanga o Te Aotearoa, the support of Ngāti Te Whiti. We have, all of us, worked hard, and there has been significant consequence of this hard work over the last few years. We continue to focus on the issues of good governance, of sustainability of mission, and the ways in which we can diversify our resourcing of mission as we face an increasingly diverse context, and we need to bring increasingly diverse methods. But we have made significant progress, and we have strategies in place to continue to achieve positive change. As I mentioned, the two trust boards now function as the combined Diocesan Trust Board. There are two trust boards, but the same trustees across both bodies, which allows the experience of trustees to be shared across the whole diocese. Challenges for our trust structure and for our trustees as we move into creative and new initiatives in mission. They require new funding strategies. It also requires the repositioning and the repurposing of assets. And some of those conversations many of you are involved in your local context, as you rethink the way that you might use traditional assets in new ways that might serve the community. If we are truly to be that community that gives itself away, if we are out of the gratitude that we feel and experience as the recipients of the love of God, and we look at the communities in which we're set and we seek to serve. Standing Committee is continuing to develop its understanding of its governance responsibilities and how these align with the responsibilities that I carry as Bishop and that our trust boards carry. But we have a system where there are all sorts of checks and balances, which is positive and healthy for a community. Where there are overlap, those overlaps need to be understood. Where there are distinctive responsibilities, those distinctive responsibilities need the space for those responsible to be able to act on them. The good news is that Standing Committee is now acting with a clear budget, a budget that actually reflects its responsibilities. It has enough income to pay its bills. We are no longer in significant arrears with our creditors, with our suppliers, with people who have shown enormous patience, like the Anglican Insurance Board. And we receive really robust financial reporting with very detailed analysis from Trust Management Limited. And I think members of Standing Committee would affirm universally, as would Finance and Audit and our trustees, that they are understandable, which is a good thing with accounts. I want to acknowledge that there are several task groups that work incredibly hard and quietly behind the scenes, but there are three people that I want to acknowledge in this synod because they have served this diocese for a very long time, and that's our Statutes Revision Task Group. It is a community of geeks, there's no doubt about it. They invite me only once a year to join them, and I can tell you that's enough. No. Look, they attend to the detail, they look for simple language, they look to enable what we want to do rather than disable it. And the experience, the wealth of experience over many years that they bring to this task, we need to recognise, and I'd like you to do so. But this really points to a very important challenge, because I think that all three of the people that I've named would admit that they are probably in the latter quarter of their years. And we have not addressed the issue of succession. We haven't addressed the issue of succession well with trustees. We haven't addressed the issue of succession well for these kinds of areas of expertise. I know that I am utterly dependent on the skill of people like Chris Harding, or in my primatial role, Bruce Gray, Jeremy Johnson, who you all met last year, people who give unstintingly of their time and expertise. Royal Commission that we're all facing into. We are anticipating having to spend 1.2 million a year in front of that commission. That's before any settlements. We are only going to have to pay 400,000 because the other 800,000 is gift in kind from the people that I've named. Extraordinary. That volunteer economy is actually something that undergirds the whole of our society and is undervalued. So let's not undervalue our volunteers, and of course you are among that number. Diocesan administration costs are now within means. You know how staffing has been reduced, but we were actually in the position to increase staffing in the last little while. So Kristen has moved to working the whole of her 30 hours for me, and we've been able to employ Helen in another half-time position. That's new capacity. We're in a position to do that because of the careful work that's been done. Most significantly has been the rebalancing of the diocese in terms of its debt. This is about internal debt owed between entities within the diocese, as I've said year by year. We didn't owe any external entity like a bank. I just want to say really clearly that camp sale money has only been used to pay camp debt. No other debts have been made repaid out of that money. Trustees have been very careful about ensuring that debt is paid where it lies. The same with what the bishopric owes to Standing Committee. That nearly, I think, $500,000-600,000 worth of costs that had been apportioned to Standing Committee and that have been repaid out of bishopric endowment. There is still remaining a debt of around $60,000 from Standing Committee to the Waikato Diocesan Trust Board, but that will be addressed over time. So we've addressed, I think, 1.2 or was it $1.4 million worth of internal debt. And it's been apportioned, as I've said. We are now clear of debt. The Society of St Francis, the arrangement over the friary, meant that the diocese had to pay some money to the society in order to take ownership of the buildings. That is now dealt with. So to the bishopric fund, I am living within my means, and that is the first time in many years. It's in part because, as I said last night, the new Episcopal Education Grant from St John's College Trust Board, and with the primacy compensation for my time, a small surplus is achievable in 2019. In 2020, we'll see an increase in the St John's College Trust Grant from $45,000 to $60,000, so that will again increase the small level of surplus that will come out of the bishopric. Now that's going to be important going forward into the slides that are to follow. But just to be clear, the fund, the endowment, if you like, of the bishopric has reduced down to $4.2 million after the settling of the debt to Standing Committee. It has only been able to earn 3.8%, that's in terms of distributable income. The actual earnings are more than that, but you have to return to capital to maintain the value of the endowment. 3.8%, but over the previous decade, 2000 to 2010, we were getting a distributable income that was averaging 7%. And we know that income is going to go down too. You can see the kind of environment that we're working in if you follow the investments. Now that change represents conservatively $150,000 worth of reduced income, so it's no wonder we were running at a debt. Over the same time, as Robin pointed out, in 2000, what you could buy for $1 now costs you $1.50. So you've got a double side to this. So moving forward, we are well positioned. We're not looking over our shoulder anymore. We can look forward. So let's do that, and let's do that well. The Bishop staff team have been quite extraordinary, and it's been a lot of fun. They've been a great group to work with, your deans and archdeacons, Stephen as the ministry educator, Simon as the diocesan manager. We've worked really hard as a group, and we've had a lot of fun. There's enormous creativity and great diversity, which means that, they say if you get 5 lawyers in the room, you'll get at least 7 opinions. It can be a little bit like that at Bishop staff as well. But we get there, and we want to offer to you 3 key priorities going forward. The first is our absolute conviction that the leadership of the diocese going forward can be confidently based on collaboration. We have the people. We have the resources. We can move forward confidently in mission if we use the gifts of each for the good of the whole. We need to focus a significant amount of resource in developing new disciples of Jesus, followers of Jesus. And what I'm going to show you shortly is a significant list of some amazing ministries, many of you are involved in them, that support some of the most vulnerable young people, children and young people and families in our communities. It's an amazing list, and there are hundreds of young people who benefit from those. But we're not seeing a growth in faith and in followers of Jesus. We need to continue what we're doing. We'll come to that in a moment. But we need to significantly invest in how we grow a new generation of followers of Jesus, a new generation of leaders. And thirdly, we believe we need to give significant focus to two very significant challenges in the diocese. How do we reinvigorate and reposition our ministry in rural communities? Because frankly, we are, in many rural communities, the only church still maintaining a presence. And just speaking in the Taranaki context, as the bishop of this diocese, I have oversight of 5 parishes that have no Anglican component at all, but are either Union parishes, Presbyterian Methodist, or Presbyterian churches, or Methodist churches. Simply because there isn't the capacity in our ecumenical partners to provide any kind of oversight or ministry support at all. We are the only providers across large sections of the rural community. I mean, Taumananui, which is so isolated. Christine, the community there, continue to maintain a ministry and a presence under huge challenge. We've got to rethink the way we resource so that our rural communities can continue to experience the services that only the church can offer. Equally challenging is the fact that Hamilton is just bursting at the seams and continuing to grow, and we have no initiatives significantly positioned where that growth is, that urban growth is. So we need to develop intentional strategies. We need, I think, David, to get around you in Gordonton and to think about how, as that city just keeps moving towards that little village, how we can be engaged in that growth and that development. So those are the 3 priorities that we believe we need to give focus to over the next 3 years. Let me talk a little bit more about each of these. So in terms of our leadership model, we've been meeting as a bishop's staff team, which is across the whole diocese, every second month, face to face. And it's a mix in that team of both geographical oversight and using the experience and the skills that each brings to take a lead in a particular portfolio area, and that's starting to develop amongst us. In the alternate months, there are 2 bishopric mission teams who meet, which are partly made up of bishop staff members and partly made up increasingly of others in that bishopric who have a particular expertise or a particular ministry focus. And that's focused on developmental strategies for each bishopric, acknowledging, particularly in Waikato, the need for focus on rural and a focus on urban. We're able to bring 150,000 per annum across that team to resource our archdeacons and our deans, to add value to some of the other initiatives that are already happening in the diocese. Relatively small amounts of money in each case, but each archdeacon, their ministry unit will be recompensed for 1 day a week for the work of the archdeacon, and where an archdeacon has a portfolio responsibility, we have the ability to distribute about 5 more days a week across those archdeacons using that 150,000. We'll also be looking to the deans of our cathedral churches, to become hubs for education, worship and ministry leadership, and we can offer some small resource in each of those places. So that's a bit of a look at what the staff team looks like, and you'll see there 1.5 new positions in green, and I'll come to those later on. We need to recognise going forward that we are generously supported by the St John's College Trust Board, and a significant amount of this is possible because of the way we reposition that. It's also the way we might use the Episcopal Education Grant. As a St John's trustee, I was a bit nervous about a conflict of interest in this, but I nervously asked the question of my fellow trustees whether that had to be for me doing all the teaching or whether I could delegate that. And there was a unanimous view around the table that it could certainly be delegated, which means that we can we can reposition and use that grant in a different way. Also, my time as primate is compensated by $60,000 a year, which can go into this mix and into this delegation. So we'll come to that a little bit more in a moment. Just to drill down into this slightly more in terms of collaborative leadership, the archdeaconries are Piako, Manatotiri, Waitomo, Paraninihi and Waitotora are small enough in terms of the number of people to form really strong clusters of mutual support and interdependence. Waikato continues to work as quite a large archdeaconry, but with 2 archdeacons working in a co-archdeacon way. I think that intimacy of relationship, that closeness of relationship, being able to form clusters of common interest and common contextual focus are really important going forward. And I'm looking to archdeacons to be leaders of those clusters. I'm looking to them to be a team leader for the clergy there, to have the confidence of the clergy. I'm looking to them to be the pastor of the pastors for clergy and their families in the first instance. I'm looking to them to be a direct conduit to me, so that I can be well informed and I can know and understand what's happening in each archdeaconry. And I'm looking to archdeacons to build a healthy culture of interdependence and mutual support and mission across that archdeaconry. And in many cases, looking to an archdeacon to bring their expertise, to bring their experience to a particular area of diocesan leadership. I'm looking to the deans and to the chapters of each of the cathedrals to represent me as bishop in each bishopric when I cannot represent myself. In the civic space, in the national political space, in the space where post-March 15, I did, I think, 12 vigils in the space of 6 days, 4 of them in this diocese and 8 of them across the country. The Dean of Taranaki stepped into the space in Taranaki and offered that leadership because I simply couldn't be in Hamilton and in New Plymouth on the same day at the same time for the same reason. Where I can prioritise, I prioritise. Where I can't, even with the wonder of technology. I am looking currently, Trevor serves as Vicar General, and I'm looking in due course to reposition that role to the Dean of Waikato. I'm looking to the deans to have a particular focus and attention on the relationship with both Amarangi and iwi. We are in a fruitful place. The national work, both within our hāhi, but also in things like the Turanga Moana settlements, the Te Papa land issues at Tauranga, Ngāti Toa in Wellington, Ngāti Maniapoto in terms of Rangi Āwhia, those matters that we have to face into, the work that is being done in Taranaki, the work in Nelson, the work in Murihiku in the far south, all of those things which our church nationally is involved in, and which as the primate of the church I have the privilege from time to time to play a role, gives me an insight into the potential that is there for the church to work with iwi in a way that very few other organisations in this country can. I'm looking to the cathedrals to engage in marketplace and public space education. I expect them to be places where debate will be held, where the engagement in the issues facing society will be to the fore of their thinking as cathedral churches. I look to them to be involved in civic leadership, and I look, where possible, to a lead in an area of expertise across the diocese. That's something that we need to build capacity for over time. So those hopes, those aspirations, those expectations will take time to achieve. But they can be a real engine room for mission for the diocese and offer great leadership in both the West, some would say the Wild West, and in Waikato, Piako, Waitomo, King Country. Children, family, youth and young adults, strengthening what we already have, developing strong networks, effective resourcing, training and opportunities, and new investments and initiatives in both Waikato and Taranaki. Now, if we were to choose to use the income from the camp sale endowment and direct it primarily towards children, youth, family and young adults, there is a significant new investment we can bring. And when you look at the range of things, now we're going to hand out copies that I've had all sorts of technology problems today when the photocopier at the office decided it wasn't going to play ball. There are full copies of this presentation coming to you, and in the full copies there's some real detail, drilled down detail about the projects and programs that I simply list. But what you'll see is common in this list. There are 3 pages of lists: Seasons for Growth, Kids First Whānau Centre, New Horizons Aotearoa, Mosaic Taranaki Youth, Get Social, Youth Transitions, Anglican Action Youth Justice, Effective Parenting Hub, the Waitara Missioner Project, Messy Church. Example is Putararu. I just enjoyed that visit so much, Jen, thank you. Parenting programs, Central Taranaki Youth Ministry, some things happening at Taranaki Cathedral, and you could go on and on and on, because I know there are examples all over the place as well. But my estimation is that only in around 20% of those initiatives, which is an investment of close to $2 million a year, mostly of government money, but only about 20% is targeted in any way towards the development of new disciples, towards the building of faith. So the Bishop's staff team are saying to the Synod, that's where we need, if we've got additional resource, that's where we need to invest it. Really intentionally, we need to bring those with a passion for that and with some expertise in that area to help shape and form that direction, but there's some resource to use. And then the wisdom we want to bring to you, and this is the St John's College Trust Board funding that enables all of this, is that we reposition that into 1.75 new positions to offer real focus and leadership in mission development, with an Associate Director of Mission Education and Vocation and a Taranaki-based Development Officer at 3/4 time to really build new initiatives in mission, establish new faith communities, and we're seeing some of those emerge already, and we know that we need to put more resource behind and beside that to strengthen what parishes, congregations are doing and doing well, and to provide a resource to help parishes and ministry units to reposition where they need to do so. We need to increase our capacity there. Now, we might not be able to afford a second bishop because the endowment can't afford it, but if we reposition the resources we have and play to the strengths that we already have and increase the resource that's available to us through St John's Trust Board, there is an enormous amount that we can do. All we're offering you at this stage is 3 key areas that we need to focus on. We're offering a structure to go forward with, and we're saying we've got some resources, but we need many, many more people to join that vision and to collaborate, bringing your expertise and experience in an area where you can contribute. This is some of the areas that team will focus on. But initially we'll be focusing in on getting a real understanding of what might help us to grow our urban presence and reposition our urban presence in Hamilton, and how we can reinvigorate our rural ministry. And we'll be looking to those rural churches that are strong and well positioned to become hubs of expertise in rural ministry. If we do it together, we have enormous potential. We are a people marked by gratitude. We are a people committed to growing as disciples and to growing disciples. And we are people who believe in being communities of transformation, transforming the communities in which we sit.